Hi, families. Mrs. Peters here. And as promised, I wanted to create a couple of videos. This one is about multiplication. And I wanted to address a question by a parent several weeks ago now, but I think it's a question that comes up a lot. Is my child expected to know their multiplication facts by the end of third grade? And traditionally, that has been the case, and it still is. The standard reads that students will know their single digit multiplication facts fluently. So that's up to 10. And when we say fluently, it's like within 3 seconds. And so I wanted to show you the work that we've done so far and maybe clear up some confusion or misunderstandings. So currently our standards do, and I believe rightfully so, um, really emphasize an understanding of multiplication as a concept. And so we start out the year in September right away, working on multiplication by introducing different models. So this is a calendar grid that we uncover pieces each day, and they represent different models or different ways that we can think about multiplication. So you can see on day 6, one of the models is a ratio table. So if one person has 2 eyes, how many would 3 people have? Day 9 is equal groups. Day 12 is an array model, which is really important. And then day 15 is kind of a contextual model. So as we do these and record these on our chart, one thing that's really important that we emphasize is as I write an equation to match this, we talk about the fact that we could write it, and most kids kind of initially say that they could write it as 5 plus 5 plus 5. But then we introduce this idea, well, we can also write it as multiplication or 3 groups of 5. So we kind of try and connect that repeated addition to writing it as this, and we really emphasize that we read multiplication equations as 3 groups of 5 is 15. And so that's how we start out in September. The idea currently, the best thinking, and that research supports, is that if we can begin to build some conceptual or mental models for what multiplication means, then once we get into trying to gain some fluency with them, it happens much easier. So we started with that. And then we have introduced the multiplication table. And I think it's interesting, and I always try and remember that they have seen an addition table, and this is a multiplication table, and kids don't just intuitively know how this works. So we spend a little bit of time just noticing how it works. And then one thing we do is we're emphasizing that certain groups and certain facts go together. So I would say historically, or maybe traditionally, the emphasis, like back when I was a kid for sure, was on memorization of facts. And I think the difference between the way we're teaching it now and memorization is memorization really was kind of all about seeing facts in a way as individual entities. And we usually learned them in an order that started with times zero, and then ones, and then twos, and then threes, and then fours, fives, sixes, and so on until we got up to the sevens, eights, nines, and tens, and beyond. But what we do now is we kind of present them in an order that allows students, hopefully, to build on what they know and make connections between how certain groups of facts are similar. So we present these strategy cards and talk about them. We talk about zero facts, ones facts, and then we get to the doubles facts. And so we connect this to what they've learned in first and second grade by thinking of times two facts as simply doubling the number. And students learn, or at least begin to learn, their doubles facts in grade 1. And then we color in as we introduce those. So we did not do any coloring on zero and ones. We just leave those blank, although some kids really want to kind of extend these other facts into those, which is fine. Then we begin to build on doubles facts. So if we know our doubles, we can think of times 3 facts as a double plus another set. And then we also talk about the commutative property. So we want kids to understand that if I get a fact like 9 times 3, I can think of that as 3 times 9, and I'm still going to get the same answer. So we talk about doubles plus one set facts, Our times 4 facts we can think of as doubling a double. So for groups of 7 would be doubling 7 and then doubling 14. And as you can see and tell, students that are really flexible with adding numbers and understand place value definitely do much better with this, I should say. We talk about times 8 facts, the strategy being a doubles facts. And then we go in and we shade those in. So students have done these so far. And again, I think the important point is that they see facts as being related, not only between themselves, like I can use a similar strategy for all of my times 4 facts, but I can also use what I know about times 4 to maybe figure out times 8. Last week, we talked about tens facts. For some students, that's very intuitive, and other students, it isn't. And I think it's probably a reflection of maybe an understanding of place value, although a lot of students, they see the pattern and they start to see that I just need to take, if I have 10 times 4, I take 4, that factor, and just add a 0. This week, we'll talk about half tens facts. And so the strategy, the way Bridges introduces it, is if I want to figure out a times 5 fact, I take a times 10 fact and I split it in half. Now, I don't always see kids using this. I think kids are pretty fluent at skip counting by 5, so I tend to see them use that strategy more often. And it especially is a little bit difficult if you have like 10 times 7, because splitting 70 in half for some students is a challenge. But this is the way that it's introduced. And then we shade in some more of our table. And then we realize we don't have that many facts left that we have to learn. And so we think about half tens plus 1 set facts as being times 5 plus a set. And again, I think kids likely figure out times 5 by skip counting, but they can add another set to figure out times 6. And then, of course, the times 9 facts. There's always kind of the finger trick kids know that I can never remember. But I know for me personally, I think I tend to rely on, what's 10 of those groups and just taking away a set. So again, the idea isn't that students have to use these particular strategies. I find that kids tend to, with enough practice, even invent strategies that work better for them. But the idea being that they're seeing facts as related and also using what they know to figure out a fact that they don't know, rather than just thinking of facts as kind of every one of them being in isolation. So we're working on this, and then the real, I think, challenge is giving kids enough practice. And so we have learned, and if we were in the classroom, we'd be doing it a little bit more, but we have learned 3 math workplace games that can provide practice, along with some conceptual work. We've learned Cover Up, where students roll a dice and create arrays and figure out the product. We've learned Frog Jump Multiplication, which the paper, in order to do that with paper, those supplies came home with students in their bags. And I don't know, you may have also, I think, gotten paper copies for loops and groups. So they're all kind of emphasize a different model for multiplication, but the key is playing them. And so I recently discovered, and I'm going to share them with students this week, a couple of digital ways that they can practice. And what I'm looking for as a teacher is opportunities that are not timed, because timed practice tends to create a lot of anxiety in kids, and anxiety definitely doesn't help us think our best and tends to contribute to pretty negative attitudes around math. In fact, it's third grade where kids tend to have more math anxiety, and that's been linked to timed tests on multiplication facts. So try and avoid those. I have ways of measuring progress, but I really try and de-emphasize the time. So one of the sites that I'm going to share with students is called Multiplication by Heart. It's on a site called Mathgon, and it uses models of equal groups and asks students to record products and gives them practice with that. So they figure it out and they enter an answer, and if they happen to get a wrong answer, it will go, oh, wait, rethink that. And the right answer. So that is a resource I'm going to share with students. And then one I think that I kind of like better, although they're both, this one is kind of equal groups. This one is called Bunny Times. And I'm going to go ahead and just play a little bit for you. And then you'll get an idea of kind of what I mean with effective practice.
Welcome to Bunny. It's cat season on the farm. Your job is to tell the bunny how many cats there are. Let's learn how to play. Tap here to start. I've been playing level 1. I want to finish the level, so I'll tap here to go back to it. How many cats are on the field? I think there are 20 cats, so I'll tap 2 and then 0. Am I right? Let me check. I'll tap eat cat. I was right. There were 20 cats.
So as you can see from that activity, it's kind of emphasizing the array model, which is probably, I would say, more advanced than the equal groups, although they're both valuable. And the idea here is trying to get kids to take advantage of how many are in each row and how many rows there are to figure it out. And what I've emphasized, and we emphasize to third graders, is remember, multiplication is about figuring out how many without counting them all. And as the problems get bigger, hopefully kids, if they are insistent on counting, get a little tired of that. So this is another really great practice tool that I'm going to be sharing, and I love that they provide this little video to teach kids how to do it. So anyway, that hopefully kind of answers the question that was posed to me, and maybe other parents have as well, is my student supposed to memorize their multiplication facts? It's like, well, they're supposed to know them with automaticity. Whether or not they're memorized or not is, a different idea. So anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll look forward to sharing those activities with my students this week.